Lori, I mean, we're watching this thing. Who knows what we're going to get on Saturday night or Sunday morning? Very much unclear. A, do you have expectations? And B, can you go through scenarios as to what the equity markets will do with various scenarios?
Yeah, you know, look, I'm going into the weekend expecting it to be a long weekend, a busy Sunday, but no real expectations on the outcome. And frankly, I think that's how a lot of investors are thinking about it. We've had a lot of head fakes on trade deals that haven't come through, so I think people really want to see the proof of what's going to come out of this before they act.
You know, Bruce, unlike, let's say, does the tax cut pass or not, or does Obamacare get repealed or not, where it was seen as an up-down outcome, almost by necessity, this is going to be kind of a give and take, some kind of ambiguous outcome, maybe part of a longer-term process. So what actually matters for the markets? Is it how the dollar reacts? Is it some other factor with regard to the Chinese economy that we're going to be keying off of? Because it's not just necessarily going to be a headline and then on Monday the market knows what to do.
No, I think that's exactly right. There's not going to be any substance that's going to totally change the outcome of the negotiations right now. I think the markets have been concerned about two things about the economy. One, that the Fed was too aggressive, and number two, of course, the tariffs and potential trade wars would cause the economy to slow. And of course, Powell laid to rest, at least put aside for the time being, the problem with the Fed being too aggressive. Now we turn our attention to the trade deal in China, and I think the best outcome for this weekend would be if China agrees to import more of our product, and as in return, the administration decides to suspend or delay the tariff increases scheduled for January. I think that would be probably the best outcome for the markets. And I think the good news is that expectations are low, and therefore any kind of forward movement here I think would be a plus for the markets.
Lori, did 2019 earnings expectations and thus stock valuations hinge on this meeting between the two largest economies of the world? You know,
I think this matters. I wouldn't say that earnings hinge on the outcome totally. I do think that if we get relief on the tariff side, then I think that will inject a little bit more of certainty in the business community, and I think that will help margins by relieving or have the potential to relieve some of these pressures that we've been seeing from commodity costs. But I don't think it fixes everything. I mean, I think you do have to go back and look at what companies were complaining about in this last reporting season. Commodity costs were a lot of it, tariff uncertainty was a lot of it, but the number one issue we've seen the last two reporting season has been wages and labor. That will not get fixed regardless of what happens this week.
Although commodity costs should be rolling over to a large degree, right?
Yeah, that was number two on the list.
Yeah.
So I think that helps. It's a step in the right direction, but the idea that this will just fix every problem we've had on the corporate profitability front, it's just not there. Helps, but it doesn't solve everything.
You know, Bruce, oil a feature again today. Right now, WTI below 50 bucks. A, what does it mean? Does it reflect sort of an expectation of a slowdown, and or should it be viewed as a good thing for the American consumer?
Well, I think the plunge in oil prices, they're down over 30% in the last month or so. And I think that's a reflection of the global economy, not just the U.S. And certainly the global economy looks to us like they're on the cusp of recession. So I think that's what's being reflected in the oil markets. And in terms of the U.S., we're not convinced that the probable peak in GDP growth was in the second quarter, along with a peak in the rate of growth for earnings. So if that's not fully priced in, I would suspect that after all of the noise subsides from the trade negotiations this weekend, the market is vulnerable next year early to further declines. But I think also that would set up a real strong market and a resumption of the secular bull market later in 2019.
Lori, it's the last trading day of November.
Yeah.
The second worst performing sector in the S&P behind energy is tech. I remember you went underweight on tech back in May. You took some heat for it, too.
Yeah.
You sticking to that?
Yeah, we actually went back underweight back in April, and then we reiterated it over the summer, September, when they broke the two sectors up. You know, we're keeping our eyes open on this one for next year. We do want to get involved in sectors that have been dislocated. Unfortunately, when I go through the data, and I think that's what you have to do when you see a sector like this that's so well loved, I don't see a washout yet. The positioning's come down. The sentiment has not broken. There are too many people defending this sector.
Lori, not to cut you off, we got President Trump walking out right now as this summit continues to get underway here, arriving at the G20 summit venue.
Lots of pomp and ceremony and all of these things.
Yeah, everybody's saying their hellos.
Yes, and it's not just the leaders of the countries. There's a lot of foreign ministers. And,
I saw Christine Lagarde.
Angel Gurria, who's I think still running the OECD, but you know, that kind of stuff.
And Lori, just broader, once we get past whatever comes out of this weekend trade-wise, how are things set up for 2019? You're still dealing with decelerating earnings. Bond yields have come down, but who knows which way they go.
Yeah, you know, let's think about the Fed. So we got some clearly good news from the Fed the other day. You know, unfortunately, when we've looked at multiple contraction during Fed tightening, a lot of times you see the trough multiple well after the Fed stops. So I do think the market's going to be entering this phase of let's look at everything that just happened. What are the lingering effects? How much damage was done? So I think that's one issue we've got to deal with.